Welcome back. This is Chicken Philosophy, the Nag Hammadi, part 43, in which I will begin reading the Greek Gospel of Thomas, apparently. We finished the Gospel of Thomas last time. And we haven't read the introduction yet. So normally what we've been doing ever since a while back is skipping the introduction, but reading the introduction after we finish the text. So the chapter or whatever we're in of the Nag Hammadi is the Gospel of Thomas with the Greek Gospel of Thomas. I'm hoping the Greek Gospel of Thomas isn't like almost identical to the Gospel of Thomas, but they included it so you can like spot the differences or something. Because that would mean reading the Gospel of Thomas again. But anyway, you know, we'll deal with there's some cool stuff in here that we'll get to in the future. But so stay tuned. But who knows? Maybe today will be good. But before that, there's a couple things that we do. One is a beverage. Today's beverage is spearmint tea. Cheers. 2 is an incense. Today's incense is Paul Jor Healing Incense. I think it's good. It's been a while since I've consciously lit one. Maybe years. Alright, okay. It smells like Tibetan incense, but specific. That's good. I mean, and good. Specific and good. How is it when it's lit? Yes, very nice, very nice. Takes me back to the Himalayas. Well, today's our Christianity episode. Yeah, alright. So, first what we do is we give a little nod to the Orthodox before we dive into the heretical in the form of Philokalia. So not only is it Orthodox, but it's Orthodox. And we do bibliomancy. So we'll do that now. Okay. So we're going to read the left side and then the right side. So this is Saint Gregory of Sinai we're talking about. So this is all of it. This first part is like Penguin, or no, it's not Penguin, but it's someone's commentary. And then I'll let you know when is the actual quote from this guy. 21. The great religious traditions all begin with the requirement of obedience, usually to the commandments of God, or moral prescriptions and proscriptions. Prescriptions and proscriptions. Interesting. Okay, Editor Edward. Prescriptions? Proscriptions. Spot the differences. Alright. Continuing. It is the key to the spiritual life. In the Orthodox Christian tradition, those seeking spiritual progress and illumination usually place themselves under the guidance of a spiritual father or mother to whom they promise their obedience. Okay. Confident that such progress and illumination will be found first and foremost because of their commitment to obey. Alright, I mean, it's pretty, yeah, it's like cartoonishly evil. No, I mean, that was just the description, though. I noticed last time the description had its own emphasis. It was making its own point. But then when you read the thing the guy was going on about in the description was just sort of part of what he was saying. So now this is the actual quote. This is this guy talking. If you are feeble in practicing the commandments, yet want to expel your inner murkiness, the best and most efficient physique is trustful, unhesitating obedience in all things. See, that's different. I mean, that can be, anyway, like obedience in all things. that's kind of making a different point than what the other guy was saying. It was, do your guru tells you, find one and pledge your... this remedy distilled... Okay, continuing, this guy talking. This remedy, distilled from many virtues, restores vitality and acts like a knife that, at a single stroke, cuts away festering sores. If, then, in total trust and simplicity, you choose this remedy out of all alternatives, you excise every passion at once. Not only will you reach the state of stillness, but also, through your obedience, you will fully enter into it, and having found Christ, and become his imitator and servitor in name and act. Saint Gregory of Sinai. Okay, this was from 4 on Commandments and Doctrines, section 107. I would just say that it doesn't necessarily have to be a human being. Okay, let's put up the spectrum. Okay, so let's put a nice Orthodox cross there. That's nice. So that's, yeah, one thing. And then on the other hand is like listening to your own inner guru, obeying your truest, most subtle, unknowable sense of intuitive, prophetic, Holy Spirit understanding of your path and present moment and your direct relationship with God. Right? So that Martin Luther, I guess. that's the Martin Luther end of the spectrum. Never mind. That's a different spectrum. That actually, put that back up. I keep hitting myself with the ruler. Anyway, yeah, that is what the Gnostics call Orthodox. This whole spectrum. But yeah, no, you can go even further than Martin Luther and get pretty far out with that. Alex Gray. All right. Enough orthodoxy. God, why do we do that to ourselves? No, thank you, Orthodoxy, for all that you do. Next, we'll read the next paragraph. We're reading this one paragraph at a time, one every episode. We mostly read Nag Hammadi. The idea, this is Tao Malachi, Living Gnosis. The idea of esoteric knowledge was not isolated to Yeshua and his circle, however, but was common in the rabbinical Judaic tradition of the time. Jewish rabbis were empowered to openly speak teachings on the scriptures, but certain secret teachings were forbidden to be spoken in public. Esoteric teachings on Genesis, the mysteries of creation, Ezekiel's vision of the Merkabah, and mysteries of prophecy were not allowed to be communicated except under special conditions and in private. In the Mishnah Hagiga, it is written, quote, "It is forbidden to discourse on the creation of the world in the presence of two, and on the Merkabah in the presence of one, unless he is wise and able to understand of himself," end quote. To be fair, that's more loosey-goosey than Lord Buddha was in his time as far as his direct teachings. So they would write this shit down, and then with lay followers, there'd be monks that would just go over the Tipitaka. We're talking like while Buddha was still walking the earth, right? So that's before it was the Tipitaka, before they wrote it down, like hundreds of years before they wrote it down. So there were the rules. Everybody had to recite the rules every half moon. But some of them were making the lay people memorize the rules, and so Buddha was like, "Stop doing that. That's a crime in my order," So that was one of the original precepts. Where this guy, whoever's talking, is saying, "Ye must be wise." So even that is like, okay, well, I mean, it's still open to sort of a little bit of interpretation. All right, that's the end of that paragraph. So. Thank you, Tao Malachi. 20 years ago, I think this wasn't that long ago. So we've got orthodoxy, and we've got Taumalachi, right? And now we're going to find there's this third thing that's called Nag Hammadi, and we're gonna read from it. But this next thing, I don't know what it is, but it's mercifully short. Okay, here we go. That's what we do here. The Greek Gospel of Thomas. No. Prologue. These are the hidden sayings that the living Jesus spoke, and Judas, who is called Thomas, recorded. Are there 3 Judases? I'm confused. Continuing. And he said, quote, whoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not taste death. All right. And quote, Jesus says, quote, let one who seeks not stop seeking until one finds. When one finds, one will be astonished. And having been astonished, one will reign. And having reigned, one will rest. And quote, so far it's like a highlight reel of the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus says, quote, if your leaders say to you, quote within quotes, look, the kingdom is in heaven, and quote within quotes, the birds of heaven will precede you. If they say that it is under the earth, the fish of the sea will enter and will precede you. Okay. And God's kingdom is inside you and outside you. Whoever knows oneself will find this. And when you know yourselves, you will understand that you are children of the living Father. But if you do not know yourselves, you are in poverty, and you are poverty. End quote. Jesus says, quote, a person old in days will not hesitate to ask a little child of 7 days old about the place of life, and that person will live. What? And that person will live, okay. For many of the first will be last, and the last first, and they will become one. End quote. Cheers. Jesus says, quote, know what is before your face, and what is hidden from you will be disclosed to you. Yeah, I always, when people ask, how do I lucid dream, I always recommend starting by being lucid while you're awake. It's easier said than done. For there is nothing hidden that will not become apparent, and nothing buried that will not be raised, end quote. His disciples asked him and say, what? Yeah. His disciples ask him and say, quote, how shall we fast? How shall we pray? How shall we give to charity? What diet shall we observe? End quote. Jesus says, quote, do not lie, and do not do what you hate, because all things are disclosed before truth. For there is nothing hidden that will not be apparent. End quote. Possible restoration, it says here in bracket parentheses. Quote, blessed is the lion that the human eats, and the lion will be human, and cursed is the human that a lion eats. 3 dots. They're getting a little Polytech Society E. We know it's in those 3 dots, right? Cursed is the one that the human eats. I don't remember what it says. Okay. Possible restoration. 3 more dots. There is light within a person of light, and it shines on the whole world. If it does not shine, then it is dark. End quote. P oxy 1 in parentheses, in bracket parentheses, okay. And then you will see clearly to take out the speck that is in your brother's eye. Jesus says, quote, if you do not fast from the world, you will not find God's kingdom. And if you do not observe the Sabbath as Sabbath, you will not see the Father. End quote. Jesus says, quote, I took my stand in the midst of the world, and in flesh I appeared to them. I found them all drunk, and I found none of them thirsty. My soul aches for the children of humanity because they are blind in their hearts and do not see. Three dots, end quote. You know those episodes of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer where it's all like, oh, their budget ran out and it's all clips from earlier episodes? That's what today's reading feels like. I'm sorry to say, but I have not read a single thing so far that I had not read previously in earlier episodes. All right, continuing. My soul aches for the children of humanity because they are blind in their hearts and do not see. Three dots, comes to dwell in this poverty. Jesus says, where there are three, they are without God. And where there is only one, I say, I am with that one. Lift up the stone, and you will find me there. Split the piece of wood, and I am there. Jesus says, quote, a prophet is not acceptable in the prophet's hometown, nor does a doctor perform healings on those who know the doctor, end quote. Jesus said, quote, a city built on top of a high hill and fortified can neither fall nor be hidden, end quote. Jesus says, quote, what you hear in one ear of yours, proclaim, end quote. Okay. Jesus says, quote, do not worry from morning to nightfall, nor from evening to morning, either about your food, what you will eat, or about your robe, what clothing you will wear. You are much better than the lilies, which do not card or spin. And since hence one article of clothing, what, and you have one article of clothing, what, three dots, you, three dots, question mark, who might add to your stature? That is the one who will give you your clothing, end quote, within quotes, end quote. I guess, yeah, that's true. The three dots in the direct translation means there's part of it missing or illegible or something. Not the same as the Polytext Society three dots. His disciples say to him, quote, when will you be revealed to us, and when shall we see you, end quote. He says, quote, when you strip off your clothing. And your clothing, what? When you strip off your clothing and are not ashamed, three dots, and you will not be afraid. Good pickup line, Thomas. That's what Jesus told me. Sorry. Jesus says, quote, often you have desired to hear these sayings of mine and have no one else from whom to hear them. And there will come days when you will seek me and you will not find me. All right. Jesus says, quotes, the Pharisees and the scholars have taken the keys of knowledge. They themselves have hidden them. Neither have they entered, nor have they allowed those who are in the process of entering to enter. As for you, be shrewd as snakes and innocent as doves, end quote. Hippopotamus, no, Hippolytus, refutation of all heresies. Okay. Quote, one who seeks will find me, and the children from 7 years from there hidden in the 14th age I am revealed, end quote. Hippolytus, refutation of all heresies. Quote, if you ate dead things and made them living, what will you do if you eat living things? Oh, good question. All right. Now we get to read the introduction to the Gospel of Thomas with the Greek Gospel of Thomas. The Greek Gospel of Thomas was mercifully short. All right. Introduced and translated by Marvin Meyer. Thank you, Marvin. The Gospel of Thomas is a collection of sayings of Jesus, numbered by scholars at 114 sayings, that are said to communicate salvation and life. In contrast to the New Testament Gospels, which focus upon the crucifixion and resurrection as they set forth a gospel of the cross, the Gospel of Thomas presents a figure of Jesus who does not die for anyone's sins on the cross and does not rise from the dead on the third day. Rather, in the tradition of Jewish teachers of wisdom, the Jesus of the Gospel of Thomas utters wise sayings one after another, and through these sayings the Gospel of Thomas proclaims a gospel of wisdom. The wise sayings of the Gospel of Thomas may be considered sayings of the sages, or logoi sophon, on account of their wisdom orientation, or they may be likened to the, quote, useful sayings, end quote, or the Chreii, Chreiai, attributed appropriately to a specific number in Greco-Roman rhetorical discussions. Further, although the Gospel of Thomas has some features in common with Gnostic texts, it is not easily classified as a Gnostic work without considerable qualification. I noticed that. The Gospel of Thomas receives its title from the titular subscript, and according to its incipit or prologue, the text consists of the hidden or secret sayings that the living Jesus spoke and Judas Thomas the twin recorded. Judas Thomas the twin. Did Judas have one of those tractor beam, like beaming, the Star Trek beam, when Thomas was created, there's like Tom Riker and Will Riker. Is it that kind of situation? Judas Thomas? Judas Thomas was thought in some circles, particularly within Syriac Christianity, to be the twin brother of Jesus. Oh, okay. And such the perfect person to function as guarantor of sayings of Jesus. Hence, the Gospel of Thomas may most appropriately be considered. I couldn't help imagining the three wise men being like, "Oh, we have found thee. Which one is he?" Like they left that part out of the Christmas story. Like, oh, he's the one on the left. Oh, we worship you. One on the left, one on the right. Hello, howdy, Thomas and Judas Thomas, twin brother of Jesus. Keep reading. Hence, the Gospel of Thomas may most appropriately be considered a sayings gospel with an insipid Gnostic perspective. All right. The sayings in the Gospel of Thomas include a variety of aphorisms, parables, stories, and other utterances ascribed to Jesus, the interpretation of which, saying one, what, announces can lead to salvation and life. Saying one states, quote, whoever discovers the interpretation, or hermenia, something like that, of these sayings will not taste death. Have you tasted your hermenia today? Sorry. End quote. There is hardly any narrative in the Gospel of Thomas, and the Gospel does not tell a story of the life of Jesus. Rather, Thomas as Jesus is a teacher of wisdom, and the value of Jesus lies in what he has to say and how his sayings lead to wisdom and understanding. In saying 2, are you going to go through all 117 of them? Oh. In saying 2, Jesus describes the epistemological process whereby one comes to insight and knowledge and the kingdom or reign of God. Quote, let one who seeks not stop seeking until one finds. When one finds, one will be troubled. When one is troubled, one will marvel and will reign over all. End quote. The Greek Gospel of Thomas adds an additional stage to the interpretive process. Quote, and having reigned, one will rest. All right, end quote. And in other words, the quest for an understanding of the sayings of Jesus is a worthy enterprise to be undertaken with commitment, and although the way to knowledge may be difficult and even disturbing, those who persevere will discover God's reign and God's rest. I haven't been to Kushinagar. That's where Buddha, Lord Buddha, passed away. I've been to Lumini, where he was born. That was where I went first. Picture time. And then Bodh Gaya. That right? No, Sarnath. Right? I got that right. And near Varanasi. And then Bodh Gaya is where he attained enlightenment. No, okay, so it goes It goes Lumini, Bodh Gaya, then Sarnath, because Bodh Gaya was where he had attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, and then Sarnath was where he started teaching. And then Kushinagar I haven't been to yet. That's where he passed away. One day, maybe. I don't know. As in Q, what? And the New Testament, especially the Synoptic Gospels. I don't know what that symbol is. Is it a Q? It's like an O with a weird underline at an angle? Something. As in Q and the New Testament Gospels, especially the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. What? And what? Oh, yeah, the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas asks his disciples to seek and find. In the Gospel of Thomas, the sayings of Jesus are open to interpretation, so that disciples and readers are encouraged to search for the meaning of the sayings of Jesus and complete his thoughts after him. The Gospel of Thomas is an interactive gospel, and wisdom and knowledge come when readers creatively encounter sayings of Jesus and respond to the sayings in an insightful manner. The number of sayings in the Gospel of Thomas are especially cryptic and riddle-like, and the need for creative interpretation is obvious. Much is at stake. Those who find the meaning of Jesus' sayings find life. The Gospel of Thomas proclaims, and they come to realize that they are children of the living Father. Or as Jesus puts it in saying 108, those who drink from his mouth will be like him, and he will be one with them, and they will understand what is hidden. The interactive nature of the Gospel of Thomas and the sayings in the Gospel of Thomas is underscored by Richard Valantasis in the book The Gospel of Thomas, when he calls the theology of the Gospel of Thomas a performative theology. He says that the theology emerges from the readers' and hearers' responses to the sayings, and their sequence and their variety, end quote. At the very end of his book, Valantatis writes, knowledge emerges from an act of interpreting. The collection of sayings under the authorship of Jesus and editorship of Didymos Judas Thomas demands a performance to unlock their individual and collected meaning. It requires work and toil to perform these and to discover, note it is not to learn, the interpretation, 4 dots. Whereas a narrative defines carefully the actors and their actions, sayings simply float meaning without careful definition or careful control. This gospel proclaims the priority of living voice over narrative, of textualized presence over narrative definition. The gospel remains performative. Okay, so that's the end of the Valantitas quote. Back to whoever's writing this. What was his name? Marvin. All right, Valantatis, Marvin. Okay. The emphasis upon the living voice of Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas may be corroborated not only by the identification of Jesus as the living Jesus, but also by a grammatical feature of the sayings themselves. The sayings are introduced by quotation formulas. Jesus said, he said, and the like. In Coptic, Pege, Jesus, Perjuraf is how you pronounce it. No, that's not how you pronounce it. And similar forms. The Greek fragments, however, employ the present indicative, lege, Jesus, or simply lege. And although in this volume we translate these quotation formulas with the English past tense, we could very well employ the English present tense. The German translations in Nag Hammadi Deutsch and the German and English translations in Synopsis Quatuor Evangeliorium do in fact use the present tense, the sayings. So God is creating the universe, on the second day, like whatever. It's all happening at once in in the present moment that keeps on going, right? The sayings coming from the living voice of Jesus are not what Jesus once said as much as they are what Jesus continues to say. Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas thus confronts his disciples and readers of the Gospel with powerful sayings, but he does not pull rank. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus assumes very few Christological titles, and as Stephen Patterson notes, Jesus in this Gospel is just Jesus. Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas is not designated the Christ or the Messiah. He is not acclaimed Master or Lord, and when he refers to himself once in the Gospel, in saying 86, as child of humanity or son of man, he does so in the generic sense of referring to any person or to himself as a human being. If Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas is a child of humanity, so are other people called children of humanity. Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas is not presented as the unique or incarnate Son of God, and nothing is said of a cross with saving significance or an empty tomb. Jesus is named the living Jesus, but God is also said to be a living one, and followers of Jesus are called living ones as well. Referring to Jesus as the living one, then, is not a specific reference to the resurrection. Rather, this phrase indicates all that is part of the realm of life, and if Jesus is a living one in the Gospel of Thomas, he lives through his words and sayings. Hey, Editor Edward.
Yes?
Hey, what's happening? You know what I'm going to ask you, right?
Pretty sure you're going to ask me to finish reading the introduction of the Gospel of Thomas.
And is that fine?
Well, let's just say it is what it is. All right, picking up right where BT just now left off. Some of what Jesus says in the Gospel of Thomas has a familiar ring. Some of it? Well, yeah, okay, not all of it. And other utterances are quite new and startling. Okay. It would be, some of it was like, what the fuck? In general, it would appear that the Gospel of Thomas is not fundamentally dependent upon the New Testament Gospels, but is an independent gospel and a primary source on the Jesus tradition. Unless, of course, it was written after the other Gospels that have exactly the same arrangements of words in the same order, quite often, independent of it. I don't know. Yeah, if you make Star Wars again and ruin half of it, or, improve it depending on your orientation, and then come out with it under a different name and somehow avoid any legal issues, then yeah, you don't have to watch Star Wars or Star Trek, whatever I said. Yeah, okay, whatever. Independent, sure. Let's get some more light in here. The green from the curtain is a neat effect, but I can't see anything, so I can't see what I'm reading. Anyway, that's substantially better. Right. But is an independent gospel and a primary source on the Jesus tradition. As elsewhere, including the New Testament Gospels, Jesus in the New Testament, Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas proclaims the kingdom or reign of God. But here the kingdom is both inside and outside. Is that only in the Gospel of Thomas? I could have sworn he talked about, the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's like a mustard seed. That's in the normie Gospels too, isn't it? As elsewhere, Jesus speaks in parables and stories, and although some of the parables are well known, others are new parables. For example, the parable of the jar of meal. The parable of the assassin. Yeah, okay, I guess so. I don't remember those, but I trust you. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus echoed the words of the Delphic maxim and declares, quote, "When you know yourselves, then you will be known.
69, dudes!
And you will understand that you are children of the living Father. But if you do not know yourselves, then you dwell in poverty, and you are poverty. your poverty. You're a Tao.
You're a Tao.
End quote. Jesus announces that children will enter the kingdom, but not business people and merchants. Okay. He says that the two will be one, and the male... Are we going to go over everything they said in the Gospel of Thomas? Fuck. No wonder. It's too long. Okay. He says that the two will be one, and the male and female will become a single one, but the female must become male in order to enter the kingdom. Jesus seems to reject outward forms of... But yeah, it just moves on. Like, never mind. I don't know. Something. Whatever. All right. Some gender reassignment surgery needs to happen before you enter into the Lord's gold Borg cube. You know, like, all right. The serious editor Edward. Let's do this. Jesus seems to reject outward forms of piety and conventional family values, and instead he recommends spiritual observance and a new order of family. He states tersely, "Be passers-by." When Thomas addresses Jesus as teacher and admits that he is unable to compare him to anything, Jesus denies that he is a teacher who is the source of truth and knowledge. Quote, "I am not your teacher." Sorry, that's not a good Jesus voice. "I am not your teacher. Because you have drunk, you have become intoxicated from the bubbling spring that I have tended." End quote. Jesus serves the spiritual beverage, but those with him must drink for themselves in order to be spiritually intoxicated. You can lead a horse to vodka, but you could force it down his gullet and make him drunk. So it's a bad comparison. Never mind. Scratch that. I mean, not literally scratch it, but I'll keep reading. The Gospel of Thomas survives as the second tractate in Codex 2 of the Nag Hammadi Library, where it is preserved in Coptic translation. 3 Greek fragments of copies of the Gospel of Thomas also survive. That must have been with the Greek New Testament part of this, as well as testimonia in early Christian literature, especially Hippopotamus of Rome, Hippolytus of Rome, refutation, quote, "refutation of all heresies." Oh, refute those heresies. The variations among the several texts make it clear that the Gospel of Thomas went through several copies, and changes could be made from one copy to another. The Coptic text of the Gospel of Thomas, like the other texts in the Nag Hammadi Library, is conserved at the Coptic Museum in Old Cairo, Egypt, and Papyrus Oxyrhynchus, with an H. 1, 654 and 655 are housed respectively in the Bodleian Library at Oxford, the British Library in London, and Houghton, Hogtown Library at Harvard University. Most likely the Gospel of Thomas was composed in Greek, probably in Syria, perhaps at Edessa, where Thomas was revered and his bones venerated. All of them? I know that's not a bone. Sorry. Although some scholars prefer a 2nd century date for the composition of the Gospel of Thomas, a reasonable case can be made for a 1st century date for a first collection of the sayings. The Coptic Gospel of Thomas from the Nag Hammadi Library was translated no later than the middle of the 4th century, but the Greek papyrus fragments have been dated much earlier, at least as early as the first half of the 3rd century. On the basis of such suggested dates, Bernard P. Granfell and Arthur S. Hunt, the first editors of the let's put it up here as Oxyrhynchus papyri, estimated that the original documents must have been composed at least half a century earlier, around 140 at the latest. More recently, Soren Giverson has revised these dates, and he has stated on papyrological grounds that the Oxyron papyrus fragments of the Gospel of Thomas may be assigned even earlier dates. The textual evidence for an early date for the Gospel of Thomas thus may rival that of any of the New Testament Gospels. Maybe they were ripping off the Gospel of Thomas. Now that'd be pretty cool if whatever Roman genius aristocrat 4D chess player was inventing Orthodox Christianity and composing the four normie Gospels was looking over at the Gospel of Thomas like, what was that about the... Oh, okay. Let's leave that one out. That one's sexist. So what's that other one? No, that's really interesting. We'll put that in here. And make more emphasis about crucifixion and how you have to eat the cookie. Never mind. Okay, where was I? The Gospel of Thomas also illustrates concerns often judged to be those that come to expression, particularly in the first century, disagreements about apostleship, uncertainty about the role of James the Just, interest in sayings of Jesus and sayings collections, and the like. Sayings in the Gospel of Thomas also seem to be transmitted in a form that is earlier than what we have in the canonical Gospels. Canonical. Such may be noted, for instance, in parables where Thomas preserves parables of Jesus simply as stories, but the New Testament Gospels may append allegorical interpretations to the parables in an effort to explain them and apply them to new situations, like a revised version of Twin Peaks where everything stops and it says, okay, so the owl means, right, no, I don't know, whatever. One saying in the Gospel of Thomas, saying 17, offers words of Jesus, quote, I shall give you what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, what no hand has touched. Oh, Jesus. What has not arisen in the human heart. No, that's too far up. It doesn't get up that high.
Where is that going?
End quote. That sound very much like what Paul cites in his descriptions of wisdom Christians in Corinth in the middle of the first century. All right. The Gospel of Thomas is a sayings gospel, representative of Thomas Christianity, and as such it has a goodly amount in common with another text from Codex 2 of the Nag Hammadi Library, the Book of Thomas. Oh, I knew there was more than one Thomas thing. So there's the Gospel of Thomas, the Nag Hammadi one, the Greek Gospel of Thomas, which is just the little shavings and clippings and, that we read earlier today, right? And then there's the Book of Thomas, which is something else. All right, cool. As well as a text not in the Nag Hammadi collection, the Acts of Thomas. So much Thomas. Oh, but it's not in the Gospel of Thomas. Oh, what a shame. Sayings and themes from the Gospel of Thomas appear in the dialogue of the Savior and Judas. Perhaps Judas Thomas is one of the main participants in the discussion. In literary genre and contents, the Gospel of Thomas resembles to a considerable extent the Synoptic Sayings Gospel Q, and some scholars have attempted to identify a common source behind Thomas and Q, and then there's a footnote next to Q that says, see John Dominic Crossan, The Birth of Christianity. I most certainly will not. All right. Unlike Q, however, the Gospel of Thomas has less... We're talking about this guy, Star Trek Q. YouTube. Hey, YouTube. We're talking about Q from Star Trek. Nothing weird. Right? Is it still weird? I don't think it's now it's all kind of been explained, right? It's like, oh, all right. So they took all the shit they were doing scrambled it up and confused it a little bit and then released it as paranoid conspiracy theory through 4chan or whatever. Never mind. Okay, where were we? Talking about Q. Unlike Q, however, what is this Q that we've been talking about as if it's been introduced, as if we should know what it is? The fuck? Unlike Q, however, the Gospel of Thomas has less of an apocalyptic and more of a mystical emphasis. Oh, Q is more apocalyptic than the Gospel of John. Well, so far, it matches the description of... yes. And Jesus in Thomas critiques approaches of those who show apocalyptic concerns. Oh, I missed that. All right. Though there are hints of dialogue and narrative in the Gospel of Thomas, and the development of those literary forms are much more evident in the Book of Thomas and the dialogues of the Savior, with discussions between Jesus and Judas Thomas also involving in the dialogue of the Savior, Mary Magdala and Matthew, and the Acts of Thomas, with the pious story narrating the adventures of Thomas in India. Oh, that's in Acts of Thomas. Okay, cool. Finally, the use of the Gospel of Thomas may be traced in other religious contexts as well. In the 3rd century, Mani adopted the concept of the twin and applied it to the divine presence that was with him. And later Manichaean authors incorporated materials from the sayings of Thomas's Jesus into their own holy books. For example, the Manichaean Psalm book, and Manichaean Kephalia. Many years thereafter, the medieval Islamic scholar Abu Hamid Muhammad al-Ghazali cited dozens of sayings of Prophet Isa in his book, is that Jesus? The Revival of the Religious Sciences, and among them are sayings reminiscent of what Jesus says in the Gospel of Thomas. Since its publication a few decades ago, the Gospel of Thomas has proved to be the most celebrated of the Nag Hammadi texts, and it has been an influential and provocative source in discussion of the historical Jesus and the interpretation of Jesus.
Sweet. Thank you, Editor Edward. I think I'm going to have breakfast. Oh, sorry. So he just finished reading, right? Yeah, I was still in the mid... Never mind. It was just editing weirdness. Did you enjoy it? Did you hear the rest of the introduction from Editor Edward? Was it cool? Hope so. So we finished the Gospel of Thomas today. Alright. Hope the music was good. And next time on Chicken Philosophy, it'll be Edward reading the Divine Pymander. But before that, most likely, we'll have Buddhist Books episode 317, which will be the Tipitaka, all about masturbation. It's just continuing the masturbation thing. If you want to be caught up on the ancient Buddhist masturbation thing, then click here. Cholavagga, not Kula. I was saying Kulavaga, but it's Cholavagga. 3, part 1. So part 2 will be coming out soon. And if it's already out, it'll be in the end screen. Why not? So if this is blank up here, that hasn't come out yet. Down here, we'll put binge my shorts for an hour. You just click that one. All right. Have a good one. Until next time.